everyone, so thank you for watching. Today I'm going to make a cat card using the fabulous Cat Capers stamp set designed by Donna Gray for Funky Fossil. Also, I'm going to use this jar stamp by Ellen Nizinsky, and we've got the background fish stamp as well. So these stamps are absolutely fabulous, and I need a get well card for a cat lover, so these were just perfect, and as you can see they've been well used so far. So first of all, I'm going to use the cat with the fish. I'm going to get him stamped up using VersaFine in Onyx Black ink. I'm using an A5 All and Create acrylic block because I've really got into them lately. I find them really easy to use. And next I'm going to make a mask for the stencil jar as well, because my plan is to put the fish stamp inside it. So as you can see, I've just got my cutting knife and my cutting mat. And I'm just going to carefully go around the edge with the craft knife to just take out the centre of the jar. I'm using a lighter weight cardstock for this, probably, I think it's about 150, 180 GSM. I usually use 300 GSM cardstock for most things, so this is just lighter because obviously I'm going to be using this as a mask, and in order to be able to stamp through it, you don't want too much thickness. Now, you could do this with the Funky Fossil stencil, mason jar stencil. That's fabulous. That's also one of my favourites, and it comes with a mask and a stencil. So it's really, really versatile and a great one to have in your stash. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just using this jar stamp by Ellen Nizinsky, and I absolutely love it. I love the little quirky hearts and the detail. So I've cut my card base down and I'm deciding where I want the jar on my card front. This measures about 5 by 5, I think. It might be 5.5 by 5.5, I can't remember now. So I've stamped it out because that's where I want the image. And now I'm going to get the fish stamp, and I'm going to carefully ink it up with VersaFine Clair. But first off, I'm going to place my stencil over the project. I'm just going to hold it in place with a little bit of mint tape or low-tack tape. Anything that you've got in your stash will work fine. Even if you've got some washi tape, that'll be enough tack to just hold it in place while we do this stamping. So that's not going to be perfect. You just want it lined up with your stamped image on the card. So I've got the fish stamp. Again, I'm using an all acrylic block for this, and I'm using Monarch, Verdant and Charming Pink VersaFine Clair inks. These give a really crisp impression. They're great for stamping. I'm still building up my collection of these inks, so I don't have many in my stash at all. But so I hope you can see what I'm doing here. I've got the Monarch ink first of all, and I'm just going to ink up a third of the stamp basically. Then I'm going to go in with the, I think I've used the Charming Pink first and then the Monarch, and then I go in with Verdant just to give a bit of a, not an ombre effect because obviously they're not blending together very well, but just to give that 3 colour effect. Now you could always go in with the lightest colour first if you're worried about getting any contamination on your ink pad, but I've just gone in with these 3 colours like this. So you're going to need to give it a really good press down on your cardstock. Probably stamping on a glass mat is not ideal for this, but I've started now, so here we go. And yeah, you just get this fabulous effect when you take the mask off. So next I've got my cat that we've stamped. I've coloured him in with coloured pencils. I've fussy cut him out, and I'm just deciding where I want him placed. And then I'm using the Blossom stencil. Now this is something that I wish I always remembered to do with my stencils, that you don't always have to mask off your image when you're going to stencil. But I'm going to use my Funky Fossil brush, and I've got another blending brush that I'm just going to use. And all I'm doing here is using the ink that's already on the brushes. And as you can see, they're well inked up, they're well used. I always get a better blend with the Funky Fossil brushes, so I will slowly be replacing my cheaper ones out and getting some new brushes. But yeah, for now, for what we're using, this cheap brush works fine. And I'm just going to blend in, it's Twisted Citron Distress Oxide I've got on there. And yeah, as I said, you don't always need to mask off the image. You can just stencil around the image when you're doing a light blend like this, and you still get a really good effect. And it looks as though you've perhaps masked off the image when you haven't, but you've got a really nice close-up blend just to add to the background. I'm using Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide that's on this brush here. And the two colours together blend really nicely. You know, where they merge, they kind of make a peachy colour, so they don't really turn into mud. And yeah, so there's a little bit more background interest on my card front. And I'm quite happy with that. But I'm just going to add in the mask back over it, because what we're going to do now is add in some Tumble Glass Distress Oxide, just to kind of complete the jar, make it look a bit more of a glassy look. And again, I'm just going in with a really light hand on my blending brush. And that's the great thing about a mask. If you take it off and you're not quite happy with the finished image in the masked image, you can go back in, you can put the mask back on and add a little bit more to it. So yeah, it's easy to make and just adds a little bit more versatility to what you're doing. Now I've got these Arteza gel pens. They're glitter gel pens. I absolutely love them. I bought them for a colouring book, but they're great for adding extra little details onto your cards. And so I just decided I'd colour the hearts in with this one. And hopefully you'll be able to see it on the close-up at the end, but it gives a really lovely shimmery effect. And the gel pen goes on really smoothly as well, so you don't get any kind of lines or marks. It comes out really nice. So next off, I'm just going to colour in the top of the jar with a couple of polychromos. I'm not sure which exact colours these are, but any grey coloured pencils that you've got in your stash are going to work just fine. All I'm using is a lighter and a slightly darker one. This is really basic colouring. I'm not very good at colouring at all. But it just finishes off the jar. I wanted to use that rather than an alcohol marker because I'd stamped in VersaFine and it was going to smudge. And as you see, I'm using a Derwent blender pen just to get a smoother blend. But I do somehow manage to smudge the mason jar with it, which you might see as it bleeds out on a close-up photo later on. But yeah, it's fine. So I've got my cat. I've decided he's going to stand next to the jar looking really proud of his collection of fish bones. I'm not sure if he's really guilty or that's just a really cute and innocent face. But there we go. Now for the sentiment, I really want it to say get well fishes. Now I don't have a stamp that says that, but I've got this Alter New stamp set and I'm just going to ink up the get well section of the stamp using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And I'm just going to stamp that off onto the card so you can see how it's going to look. And it just gives a really nice impression. They're really nice stamps. Then I have a Fishes sentiment that's from a Papercraft Society box kit. And again, I'm just going to stamp that in Onyx Black ink. Now, I really didn't like how this looked in a line. I think the two fonts kind of clashed a little bit. So I did decide to re-stamp these out. And as you'll see in a moment, I've just stamped them out stacked. So they get well at the top and then the fishes underneath. And I just think that just gave a really nice finished look, basically. So I just trimmed the sentiments down in my Tim Holtz trimmer. I'm absolutely rubbish with scissors in cutting in a straight line, so I always like to trim my sentiments on my trimmer. And now I'm just going to get my placement right, work out where I want the sentiment. And I do decide in the end of that top left corner. I do try the other one, but I definitely prefer the stacked sentiment in this instance. So I'm just going to add a few little foam pads to the back of the cat. Just to give it a little bit of dimension. It just adds a little bit of interest to the card. It just creates another little layer. And yeah, I just think I often use foam tape on my cards because I just really like using it. I just like the effect that it gives. So I just popped him up there. Then I decided to get the Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide. And I'm just going to ink around the edges of the sentiment. And I made a little bit of a mess of it, to be honest. I did just want a border, but I smudged it. I got a little bit on my finger now. I think I'm slightly off camera for this, but I do just get my blending brush. I don't add any more ink to it, and I literally just blended out the ink across the sentiment, just to cover up the smudge, really. And there we go. So we've got this nice little pink sentiment of Get Well Fishes. And again, I propped that up on some foam tape and added that to the top left hand corner of the card. And then just to finish, I add a matte layer of pink cardstock. I'm using Collall glue in a Woodware fine tip glue bottle just to make it easier. I do really like this glue because it's really strong, it doesn't warp the paper. And then I add it to a 6x6 card base. So I really hope you've enjoyed watching me make this card today. I know a lot of the techniques are very basic and simple, but it's nice just to show a card coming together, and it's nice to be using these cat caper stamps from Funky Fossil Designs. So please let me know in the comments below if you've enjoyed this video today, and please don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see any more. Take care.